In this video, I'm gonna show you how to produce a song that sounds like Aurora, which I would describe as fantasy cinematic pop or cinematic fantasy pop. Pop music that sounds like fantasy. I'll let you decide that one. We got the Tigger mug. If you know, you know. We're ready to go. Let's do it. All right, so this is the song that we're gonna be looking at. It's a song called Find Us First. It's coming out very soon. This is the first song I've done with the featured artist, Even Megan. I co-wrote this song with my friend Sailor Wilterding, and I'm really excited about this one. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever worked on. And like usual, it looks like there's a whole lot going on, but I'm gonna try to break it down for you as simply as I can so you can understand the bigger picture of how songs like this are actually made. Let's start at the very beginning. So here's a little snippet of what we're gonna be looking at.
When I look in my mind, I find you there every time. Here we stay, running free from villains like reality.
First off, I think that Megan just absolutely nailed the Aurora vibe on this. This is what her voice kind of sounds like anyway, but I thought she just did a killer job, so seriously, huge props to Megan on the vocals. But let's start at the very beginning of the song and let's kind of break it down little pieces at a time. This is how we start.
When I look in my mind, I find a world I call mine.
Now this literally is two things, only two things to start the entire song: piano and vocals. That's it. All we have is this felt upright piano, which is actually this guy right behind me. And as you're gonna see, I used a ton of live instruments on this song, which I also recognize a lot of people are not gonna be able to do. But for a lot of the music that I'm working on lately, I've been pulling on real musicians, real instruments, really trying to make my music sound more authentic in that way. And again, I recognize that's not something everyone can do, but there are a ton of felt piano libraries you can check out if you don't have an actual felt piano like me. So we've got this piano, and then Megan's vocal.
I find a world I call mine.
Now, one little thing that I did on this that I think is really something that makes this first verse feel so much more interesting is this track right here. What I did is I duplicated Megan's vocal, and then I threw a plugin called Portal on it. Okay, now Portal is a very funky plugin. I don't know if I even recommend this plugin because I think it's kind of expensive, if I'm not mistaken. And it's super, super hard to use. It's a plugin by Output. And I ran it through a little bit of little alter boy to increase the format so it sounds a little childlike, and then ran it through some reverb as well. But this is what that sounds like. Let me just kind of skip ahead to where it plays a little bit better. And what I'm doing is actually automating some of the macros on here, you can see, and this is where we're getting some of the stutter effects, some like repitching almost happening. It's some really bizarre stuff. I literally have no idea what's happening. I'm just gonna be completely transparent with you. I have no idea what's really happening under the hood. All I know is it's weird and cool, and it really fit the vibe of this specific song. And when you put it in the context and you think about what is being sung about, this is from the perspective of a girl who doesn't want to grow up. This is basically Peter Pan. Like literally this song is like Peter Pan meets Alice in Wonderland type vibes. And so I wanted to add something that felt childlike, also a little bit mystical and mysterious and fantasy oriented, but also maybe slightly a little weird as well.
Here I stay, hidden from villains.
So it adds this really, really cool character to Megan's vocal, which I think worked super, super well. And throughout this song, what I'm doing is I'm using these very subtle elements to kind of create some ambience and emotion and feeling. So if we just listen to the instrumental going into this portion here, you'll notice I've got just a couple little elements that pop in, and they're very subtle, but they add this unique kind of character to it. Now that like fluty kind of sound is the Osmos. This is seriously like one of the coolest instruments I own. Absolutely love the thing. And it gets these really cool sounds. I use it quite a bit more throughout the song as well.
Growing up,
This is where it gets interesting.
chase me down, pull me out, send
So this is what we kind of call the pre-chorus. This song is super weird because there's not really a chorus. It's literally just like 2 verses and then an instrumental, and that's it. It's kind of a bizarre structure of the song, but it worked really, really well. So let's kind of break this down. The first thing is we added hammered dulcimer. Hammered dulcimer is one of those sounds, in my opinion, that helps sell the kind of fantasy feeling. And yes, this is a real hammered dulcimer, thanks to Musiversal. I used a bunch of musicians from Musiversal, seriously. This is not a sponsored video or anything like that, but Musiversal is absolutely one of my favorite things ever because it's how I get all the live musicians without having to go find people locally, where I live in a town that there's not good enough talent to be bringing people in the studio. No offense to people that live. If you're watching from my town, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to, anyway. Then I'm adding in a little bit of these tremolo strings here. Now, what I did that's interesting in this song is I blended live strings. So you can see violin 1, violin 2, viola, and live cello. All of these are all live instruments. So let's take a listen. Okay, so this is a single cellist and then a single violin player and viola player that we layered multiple times on top of themselves to create more of a chamber string type sound. Now there's some difficulties with doing this, and one of the biggest issues with doing this is sometimes you can wind up with a really phasey sound. The thing that I found is most helpful is to use smooth operator and then do something like this where we're taking kind of a lot out, specifically the 2 to 3K range is where I notice a lot of the bow noise creates some phase stuff. So anyway, smooth operator by Baby Audio, one of my favorite plugins as well for this type of job. And then we used a couple little deeper elements here as well. So we've got a deep pad going on, and then we've got 2 layers of bass. One is from East-West, and then the other one is the sub 37 over here. So this is real. And that's pretty much it for this section, right? And then we wind up with this really cool vibe.
Chase me down, pull me out, send the search, you'll have to find me first.
And that's it. And then we get into a little bit of an interlude that goes into the next verse. So again, from a structural standpoint, this song is quite bizarre because there's no true chorus. It's literally just a verse. And then we have a little instrumental moment and then another verse and then a big instrumental moment. And that's pretty much it. So this moment here is really fun because we wind up with our first kind of melodic thing happening in the instrumental, which is in the strings. I'm going to collapse these down. Just know that this is multiple layers of strings going on here. Now, something to keep in mind is that I am layering it with other strings. This is not just the live strings only. I am blending them with these strings as well. So the reason that I'm doing this is because if we only use the live strings, we are lacking a little bit of depth and richness. And so this is a technique that I use all the time whenever I'm using live musicians, is I usually blend the live players with another virtual string orchestra. And I'm taking the best of both worlds, okay? So the best of the live musicians is you get the realism of how they actually play those legatos in particular, how they move from note to note, the bowing, all of that stuff. And a live musician can play fast passages and it doesn't feel or sound sluggish like a lot of virtual string libraries will. But the benefit of using a string library with a live musician is these string libraries are recorded so well that they have a little bit of depth that you're not going to be able to capture when you take a single player and layer it. And so these two things blended together, you really wind up with the best of both worlds. That sounds like this. All right, let's get into this next little instrumental moment because it's really cool. us into the second verse. Now this is such a fun moment because we've got all these kind of plucky elements, we've got all these weird textures, and then on top of that, Megan sent me this. It's so good. It's so awesome. I did not ask her for this too. She just like said to me, she's like, I think this works. And she got that because I have this flute going on. Which sounds so good. And that again is the Osmos. And this isn't just a big pitch for the Osmos, but seriously, the fact that you can actually use vibrato on it, and it's amazing. And then I'm using this is from Exhale. This is a really cool texture. So what I did is I took a chunk and then I basically chopped it up and picked just a section I liked. It's pretty cool. And then the other thing that we have is the hammer dulcimer, kind of doing its fun little stuff here. Which again, kind of gives you this almost fantasy, almost medieval vibe. And the fact that this is a real instrument, you can hear all the, almost like the way the hammers are hitting it. It sounds almost a little bit messy. It's very tactile. You feel like it's just popping out and touching you, which is really, really sweet. Now, I would have loved to have had live mandolin. I just don't think I had time, but I did add some mandolin as well. And that blended with the hammer dulcimer is really cool. And that's the gist of it. And then we have the bass going on. And then definitely some fun stuff here is the percussion. So I did record djembe and cajon. Now these are live. Now, this would take a long time to get into because as you can see, there is a lot going on here, okay? And I just want to show you what this all sounds like without any processing whatsoever. Versus this. Now, I don't have time to get into everything that's going on here because there's a lot. As you can tell, it sounds so much better when you mix this, but that I feel like would require a whole video on its own. So let me know if you would like to see that. It's pretty niche to talk about how I mixed djembe and cajon. But again, this is selling that fantasy vibe so much. And then we blend this with a boom here or a hit. And all together. And we wind up with something really, really fun in this moment. And that takes us into verse 2, which sounds like this.
When I look in my mind, I find you there every time. Here we stay.
Okay. We're gonna take this a chunk at a time, phrase by phrase. So we've got this 4-bar phrase here, we've got another 4-bar phrase here, and a lot is happening in this. Okay, so first things first, let's just look at what she did vocally. I did not produce these vocals, Megan produced these vocals, so again, just fantastic job, Megan. She went over, above and beyond.
When I look in my mind, I find you there
Amazing.
every time.
So she did a really good job with some doubles and harmonies, and it just did such a good job selling the vibe that we're going for on this. So just taking a look at the instrumental for a moment now. Let's just take a look at the core of what's going on. The first thing is we've got the percussion kind of doing its same thing here. Okay, so the percussion is doing its thing. We got bass doing its thing here. Off. So the bass is kind of hitting for a couple beats and then sucks out. So it's like 2 beats that it holds on to and then comes out, 2 beats, comes out, 2 beats, comes out, which is creating this cool feeling of cut, out, in, and that makes this feel a little bit more entertaining as well. But it's really these 3 elements here that create all of the uniqueness of this section. Now, this is fun. So this is an instrument called signal. This is a pulse engine from output, okay? And it started with just this sound right here. Right, dun 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 dun, right? And if you held on to it for longer, you actually wound up with this sound right here, which is the second half. It kind of does this cool thing. So what I did is I chopped these out and I put them on separate tracks. So now we have this first part here for 2 beats on this track, panned left, so it's over here, okay? And then the second half of it, I chopped out and then put on the other side on the right. And then I had the idea of slowing it down so it it kind of drops in pitch over time, which is how we end up with this. Right there, kind of drops in pitch. And then to have something in the middle between this, I use this sound, which is from Arcus, Native Instruments Library, which is kind of an orchestral, weird, windy, I don't even know, it's kind of a crazy instrument. And with that, I'm using Shaperbox to do some fun stuff on a fluctuation level. And then this library is also kind of panning around. So you end up with this almost 3-dimensional sound between these 3 tracks here. Really interesting feeling here. And this is, again, creating this fantasy feeling, but then she's singing about, like, you know, when I look inside my mind and like this, you know, I don't want to grow up and we're hiding, and there's this, it's just this very bizarre feeling that we're trying to capture with this. And I think that this right here is kind of what makes this verse sound so interesting.
In my mind, I find you there. Every time, here we stay.
Okay, so now this brings us to the second half of this, which I'll just play for you.
We stay, running free from villains like reality.
The goal here was to create something incredibly textural using rhythm, okay? I go from this very kind of washy vibe where it kind of feels like things are flowing around. And then once we get to this section, I wanted to feel like you can just feel like the individual notes that are tapping out, that are hitting out, and it gives you this very tactile feeling. And that is why we made it the way I did. And so the first thing worth noting is the hammer dulcimer, which sounds like this. I'm so grateful that my player, I am blanking on his name, from Musiversal, he was so good because he was willing to just try weird things that I asked him to do. One of these was this example of the dulcimer swell. He told me that he had this little mini bow that he could almost bow out noises. I was like, well, could you use that to almost create like a whoom, whoom, whoom kind of sound to transition into stuff? By itself, that sounds really kind of odd, but you put it in the context. And then by panning them on opposite sides and doing 2 layers of that, it feels like it's kind of coming around you, which is a really interesting feeling. We have the main hammer dulcimer, but then also I had him do some interesting things like playing it with a pick. Like a guitar pick. This right here, he's actually using his hand on the string while he's playing it to give this kind of muted palm mute type sound like you would do on a guitar. So the hammer dulcimer was honestly one of the coolest parts of this entire song. And then blended in with that, we have that mandolin. And then to just add to this rhythm, we also had the string player, my violins, playing out these pizzicato elements with plucking. I'll just play these soloed out so you can hear what they sound like. And that's how we end end up with this super textural, tactile feeling thing. One thing I want to mention on the vocals that I thought was really fun, I took this line in the vocals where she sings like the word like. So here's what she sings, right?
From villains like reality.
Now I had this idea of what if I took the word like, and I took all the backup vocals, ran it through a huge reverb, reversed that reverb, and then use that as a swell. Okay, this is what that sounds like by itself. Okay, so that's what that sounds like on its own. But you put in the context of the vocals, it's such a cool vibe.
Running free from villains like.
Just little subtle things like that that help sell the ethereal fantasy kind of pop cinematic. I don't even know what this is, but that vibe.
From villains like reality.
And then once we get into this section, this is where things start kind of becoming a little bit more swelly. I get away from this very textural feeling, and then we get into more of a chords feeling.
Chase us down. Pull us out. Send us search. They'll have to find us first. They'll have to find us first.
So pretty much this whole thing is very, very string focused, very, very focused on the strings. Let me just play these for you. Which just creates this openness. We go from this very kind of rhythmic thing to now very, very sustained and held out. This contrast is helping create a very unique feeling as we get through the song. And that's about it that happens here. And this brings us to the last portion of the song, which is just full send instrumental. I don't know what came over me, guys. I don't know what came over me. I just decided, what if I just do the weirdest stuff possible in terms of chords, and I modulate within here, and it just sounded weird. I thought it sounded cool, and it worked. So I'll just play this for you, and we'll kind of take a look at it too.
They'll have to find us first. Come and find us Come and find
So that's obviously a pretty long instrumental section. Like I said, I don't know what came over me. I felt it though. I'm not gonna nerd out on the theory, even though I totally could nerd out on the theory. I guess if you guys really want me to dig deep into the theory as to why the modulation all worked, I suppose I could do that, but I'm not going to in this video. The main thing here is that this is very, very focused on this melody in the strings, as well as the textures in the strings. So pretty much across the board, the main thing that's happening is the melody. And then mixed in with that, I have this arpeggiated thing going on. Just this nice, cool arpeggio, and this is just outlining the chord. And literally, it's just that happening with everything else that we've already introduced. And then the way the song ends is with one last little moment in the strings.
Chase us down, pull us out,
and then that's the end. And so what I did here at the end with the strings, just so you can hear what this sounds like. Now, if you're thinking, Nathan, why does it sound like that? It sounds all scratchy and kind of weird. And that is because I asked them to play it that way. And so when you're playing on a violin or a cello, depending on where you actually place the bow, it will change how things sound. So there's playing in the middle of the bridge, or right in the center would be normal, right, or ordinary. But if you play closer to the fretboard, then that is called sol tasto. And if you play closer to the bridge, which is the back, that's called sol ponticello. Now, sol ponticello is going to give this very scratchy feeling. Sol tasto gives you this very airy, floaty feeling, okay? Each of these are very, very different. And so what they asked them to do was to play tremolo, which is where they're playing as fast as possible, right? But then as they're playing, moving from the middle to sol ponticello, which is close to the bridge, and then around. So they're moving around, which is creating this feeling that things are kind of becoming scratchy and then less scratchy and then scratchy and less scratchy. And I asked the players to do it randomly, so that way we get this weird kind of feeling about it. And that's how we wind up with this. And what that's doing is creating all these harmonics as well, which gives you this really kind of weird, floaty, airy thing over top of the pitches, which is such a cool way to end, in my opinion, because this is, after all, a fantasy cinematic pop track. If you want to see how I also produced another cinematic pop track, you can check out this video right here. I'll see you there.